The rain was falling hard the night the police opened the last door. A flashlight beam moved slowly across the small apartment. A chair, a table, a wall covered with photos. Every photo showed a different face, different people, different years, but every face had something in common. They were all missing. Detective Robert Keppel stood frozen in the doorway. He had worked crime scenes for years, but he had never seen anything like this. Pinned beside the photos was a simple map of the city, and on that map, tiny red circles, dozens of them. Each circle marked a place where someone had disappeared, someone who was never seen again. Keppel felt a cold weight in his stomach, because he knew one thing immediately. This wasn't random. This was a pattern, and whoever made this map was still out there. But what detectives did not know yet was something even more chilling. The person who made the map had already spoken to the police more than once, and no one realized who he was. Not yet. 3 years earlier, the city seemed peaceful. It was the kind of place where people locked their doors at night, but never really felt afraid. Families walked their dogs. College students rode bikes down quiet streets. Most people believed serious crime happened somewhere else. But that belief began to change one summer morning. A young woman named Lisa didn't show up for work. Her boss called her phone. No answer. Her friends knocked on her apartment door. No answer. At first, people thought she had just gone away for a few days. Maybe she needed a break. But when police entered her apartment, something felt wrong. Lisa's purse was still on the kitchen table. Her shoes were by the door. Her car was parked outside. It looked like she had stepped out for just a moment, but she never came back. The missing persons report was filed quickly. Detectives searched nearby parks. They checked hospitals. They talked to neighbors. Everyone said the same thing. They saw nothing. Days passed, then weeks. The case slowly became quiet, until another person vanished. This time, it was a college student named Karen. She disappeared after leaving a bookstore. Security cameras showed her walking to the parking lot. Then the footage ended. Her car was still there. Her keys were gone, but Karen was missing. Police now had 2 cases. 2 young women. 2 strange disappearances. Still, detectives believed they were unrelated. Cities are large places. People disappear for many reasons. Sometimes they run away. Sometimes they start new lives. But sometimes, something far worse happens. Months passed. Then another woman disappeared, and another. Each time the details looked a little different. Different neighborhoods, different times of day, different backgrounds. But Detective Robert Keppel began to feel uneasy. He had seen something like this before. Not the exact details, but the feeling, the quiet pattern hiding under chaos. Serial crime rarely looks obvious at first. At the beginning, it looks like coincidence, until the numbers grow too large to ignore. Keppel spread the case files across his desk. Photos, witness notes, maps, phone records. He studied everything carefully. Then he noticed something strange. Each missing person had last been seen near a busy road. Not hidden places, not dark alleys, public areas. Places where a stranger could approach someone quickly. Places where a person might accept help or a ride. Keppel circled each location on a city map. Then he stepped back. The circles formed a rough line, a path that crossed the entire city. Someone was moving, someone who knew the roads, someone who could disappear just as easily as his victims. But there was still a problem. No witnesses had described a suspect. No clear evidence. No fingerprints. No vehicle. Just silence and missing people. The city grew nervous. Parents told their daughters not to walk alone. College campuses held safety meetings. Police patrols increased. But the disappearances continued, and each new case brought more questions. Then something unusual happened. A man walked into a police station. He said he had information about one of the missing women. The officer at the desk asked his name. The man smiled politely. Ted Bundy, he said. At the time, the name meant nothing. Bundy looked normal. Clean clothes, calm voice, friendly smile. He told officers he had seen something strange near a park weeks earlier. A man talking to a young woman. The officer asked what the man looked like. Bundy paused. Then he described someone with dark hair, tall, driving a light-colored car. The information sounded useful. The officer wrote everything down. Bundy thanked them. Then he left. It seemed like a helpful tip. Nothing more. But months later, another woman disappeared. And this time, a witness saw something important. A young man standing near a parking lot. His arm was in a sling. He asked a woman for help loading something into his car. The witness remembered one more detail. The man told the woman his name. "Hi," he said. "My name is Ted." Police across the state began receiving similar reports. A man with an injured arm, a polite voice, a simple request for help. The women who spoke to him were never seen again. Detective Keppel now realized something terrifying. The man who visited the police station, the helpful witness, the man who gave them information, might actually be the killer. But proving that would not be easy, because Ted Bundy had something detectives rarely see. He was patient, careful, and extremely good at pretending to be normal. He studied people, he watched police investigations, and he moved constantly, across cities, across states, sometimes disappearing for months. Then suddenly another victim would vanish. By the time police connected the cases, Bundy was already gone. Years passed like this. Investigators chased rumors, witnesses came forward, but solid proof remained just out of reach. Then one winter night, a highway patrol officer saw a suspicious car parked in a dark area. The officer approached slowly. Inside the car was a man, calm, polite. The officer asked his name. The man smiled slightly. "Ted," he said. But this time, something was different. Inside the vehicle, officers found strange items. Rope, handcuffs, tools, things that made no sense for a simple driver on a quiet road. Ted Bundy was arrested. But the story was far from over, because what police discovered next shocked even experienced investigators. When detectives searched Bundy's apartment, they expected small clues. Maybe a few personal items. Maybe evidence from one or two crimes. Instead, they found something far more disturbing. A hidden collection of photographs. Dozens of them. Women, different ages, different places. And when detectives compared those faces with missing persons reports, their hearts dropped. The number kept growing. 10, 15, 20. Each photo matched someone who had disappeared, someone who never returned home. Detective Keppel looked at the wall in silence. The pattern he suspected was real, but the truth was worse than anyone imagined, because one detail didn't make sense. Some of the photos were taken after the victims had already disappeared, which meant only one thing. Ted Bundy had been keeping secrets even police had not discovered yet. And somewhere out there, there could still be victims no one knew about. As detectives continued searching the apartment, an officer opened a small desk drawer. Inside was a folded notebook. On the first page were only a few words. A list of cities, dates, and symbols no one could understand. Keppel stared at the page. Because the dates on the list were still continuing, they reached into the future, which meant something impossible, something terrifying. According to this notebook, Ted Bundy hadn't finished yet. The courtroom was silent. Reporters filled every seat. Police officers lined the walls. And at the center of it all sat Ted Bundy. He looked calm, almost relaxed. He wore a neat suit and tie. His hair was combed carefully. If someone walked into the room without knowing the story, they might think he was a lawyer, or a teacher, or someone's friendly neighbor. But detectives in the room knew the truth. Behind the polite smile was a man suspected in many disappearances. Young women, different cities, different years. And now, the investigation had finally caught up to him. Or so they thought. Because the deeper detectives looked into Bundy's life, the more confusing everything became. Years before the arrests and headlines, Ted Bundy seemed like an ordinary young man. He studied law. He volunteered in politics. He worked at a suicide hotline center. In fact, at that hotline, he once worked beside Ann Rule, who later wrote about the case. Rule remembered Bundy as polite and thoughtful, someone who listened carefully to people in pain, someone who tried to help. No one imagined the truth hiding behind that calm voice. Bundy had another life, one that almost no one could see. Detectives began rebuilding his past step by step. They studied where he lived, where he worked, where he traveled, and slowly, a terrifying pattern appeared. Bundy moved often, from Seattle to Salt Lake City, from Washington to Utah, and later Colorado. And in each place, young women disappeared. Police reports from different states had never been connected before. Each city investigated its own missing persons cases. Each department searched for different suspects, but Bundy had quietly traveled through them all. It was like a puzzle scattered across the country. Now investigators were finally putting the pieces together, but Bundy had something that made the investigation harder. He understood the legal system, and he used that knowledge to his advantage. During early court hearings, Bundy made a surprising decision. He chose to act as his own lawyer. This allowed him to speak directly in court, to question witnesses, to study the evidence against him. Sometimes he even smiled and joked with reporters outside the courtroom. Many people watching on television were confused. How could someone accused of such serious crimes appear so calm? The answer was simple. Bundy believed he could outsmart everyone, but investigators were slowly gathering stronger evidence. Witnesses began coming forward. Some remembered seeing Bundy near college campuses. Others remembered the injured arm trick, a sling, a cast, a request for help. One witness described helping a man load books into a car. Later, she saw his face on the news. It was Ted Bundy. Every new witness tightened the case. But something unexpected happened next. Something no one in the courtroom believed possible. Bundy escaped. It happened in Aspen during a court hearing in 1977. Bundy asked permission to visit the law library. He was representing himself, after all. The request seemed reasonable. Guards allowed him inside the small room. For a while everything looked normal. Pages turning, pens writing notes. Then suddenly, Bundy stood up. He walked toward an open window, and he jumped right out of the courthouse. By the time officers reached the window, Bundy was already running down the street. The man accused of multiple murders had vanished. The city exploded with panic. Police cars raced through neighborhoods. Helicopters searched the mountains. Roadblocks appeared on highways. But Bundy had prepared carefully. He disappeared into the wilderness. For 6 days, he moved through forests and hills. Cold nights, little food. But he kept moving. Finally, exhausted and lost, Bundy was caught again. He was taken back to jail. This time security became much tighter, but the story still wasn't over. Because months later, Bundy escaped again. The second escape shocked the entire country. Bundy had secretly been losing weight for weeks. No one noticed the reason. He was slowly making his body smaller. Then one night, inside the jail in Glenwood Springs, Bundy climbed through a small hole in the ceiling of his cell. He had cut the hole slowly, piece by piece. He crawled into the ceiling space. Then he moved through the building until he reached an empty apartment used by jail staff. From there, he simply walked out the front door. For hours, no one realized he was gone. By the time the alarm sounded, Bundy had already left the state. He boarded buses, changed cities, moved across the country, and eventually he reached Tallahassee. For a short time, he lived quietly under a different name. But Bundy's crimes were not over. In January 1978, something happened that would finally expose the full horror of the case. Late at night, a sorority house near Florida State University became the center of a terrifying crime scene. Students woke to chaos. Police arrived quickly, but the suspect had already fled. Witnesses reported seeing a man running away into the darkness. A few weeks later, Bundy was stopped by police while driving a stolen vehicle. At first, he gave a fake name, but officers soon recognized him. Ted Bundy was finally arrested again. This time, the investigation would not lose him. Detectives from several states traveled to Florida. They brought evidence, witness statements, old case files, and most importantly, questions. Many questions. Because the notebook found in Bundy's apartment still haunted investigators. The list of cities, the strange symbols, and the dates that stretched forward in time. Detective Robert Keppel studied the notebook again. Each city matched places Bundy had lived or visited. Each symbol might represent a crime, but the meaning was still unclear. Then Keppel noticed something disturbing. One city on the list had never been connected to Bundy before. Not once. No police reports. No witness statements. Nothing. But the date beside that city was only a few weeks old. Keppel looked up from the notebook slowly. If the list was real, then there might be victims no one had even started searching for, which meant the investigation was about to grow much larger and much darker. But Bundy himself held the answers. And when detectives finally began questioning him in detail, he smiled calmly. Then he said something that made the entire room go silent. "There are things," Bundy said quietly, "that you still haven't discovered. And somewhere in that long list of cities, one final secret was waiting to be uncovered." The room was quiet. Only a small recorder sat on the table. Across from the detectives was Ted Bundy. His hands were folded calmly. Outside the room, reporters waited for answers. Families waited for truth. For years, police across the United States had searched for the same thing. What really happened? How many victims were there? And why? Now, the man who knew the answers was finally speaking. But Bundy did not talk like someone telling a simple story. Instead, he spoke slowly, carefully. Sometimes he stopped in the middle of a sentence. Sometimes he changed the subject. It was as if he was deciding which secrets to share and which to keep forever. Detectives had learned something important about Bundy. He liked control. Even now, sitting in a prison interview room, he wanted to control the story. But investigators were patient. They had waited years. They could wait a little longer. Bundy began by describing how he watched people. He studied busy streets, college campuses, parking lots, places where someone could disappear quickly, places where strangers trusted each other. His voice remained calm as he explained the method he used many times. The sling on his arm, the polite request for help, a short conversation, then the victim would walk toward his car. Most people never imagined danger in that moment. Detectives listening to Bundy noticed something strange. He often spoke in the third person. Instead of saying, "did this," he would say, "the person might do this." It was a way to distance himself from the crimes. But the details he shared were too specific to ignore. Each location he described matched a real case. Each timeline matched missing persons reports. Slowly, the puzzle that had confused investigators for years began to make sense. One of the detectives in the room was Robert Keppel. Keppel had studied serial crime for most of his career. He knew Bundy was revealing the truth little by little, but Keppel also knew time was running out. Bundy had already been convicted in Florida for the crimes that happened after his escape. The legal process had reached its final stage. Soon, the case would end, and any secrets Bundy kept might disappear forever. So Keppel asked a direct question. How many victims were there? Bundy looked down at the table. For a long moment he said nothing. Then he gave an answer that shocked everyone in the room. He said the number was higher than people believed. Much higher. Some crimes had never been discovered. Some victims had never been identified. And some places had never even been searched. The notebook found years earlier suddenly became more important than ever. Investigators placed it on the table. The same list of cities. The same mysterious symbols. Bundy stared at the page for several seconds. Then he slowly pointed to one location, a quiet area outside Seattle. He explained that investigators had missed something there. A place hidden by trees. A place where no one thought to look. Police teams later returned to that area. And what they discovered confirmed Bundy's story. Evidence connected to victims who had been missing for years. Families who had waited for answers finally learned the truth. But the investigation did not stop there. Bundy pointed to other locations. Places in Utah. Places in Colorado. Each new detail helped detectives close more cases. For investigators, it was both relief and heartbreak. Relief because the truth was finally becoming clear. Heartbreak because so many lives had been lost. Meanwhile, the world was watching closely. Television stations covered every development. Newspapers printed updates daily. The case had become one of the most studied criminal investigations in American history. People were asking an important question. How did one person commit so many crimes without being stopped sooner? Experts later explained several reasons. First, Police departments in different states rarely shared information quickly at that time. Second, Bundy moved often, making connections harder to see. And third, he appeared trustworthy. Most people believed danger looked obvious, but Bundy proved that criminals sometimes hide behind normal appearances. As the interviews continued, detectives noticed something unexpected. Bundy seemed different when he talked about certain victims. Sometimes he paused longer, sometimes his voice became quieter, but he never showed clear emotion. For families listening to the recordings years later, that calm tone was difficult to understand. Still, investigators focused on the most important goal: truth. Each confession helped close another chapter of the investigation. Each confirmed detail allowed police to update old files. Cases that had remained unsolved for years were finally connected. But one mystery remained. The notebook still contained symbols that Bundy never fully explained. Even after hours of interviews, even after days of questioning, some parts of the map remained unclear. Detectives believed they had discovered most of the truth, but perhaps not all of it. In the final days before the case closed, Bundy gave one last statement. He spoke about how important it was for people to stay aware of danger. He said, "Criminals often rely on trust, on normal situations, on moments when people lower their guard." Many experts later studied those final words, not as sympathy, but as a reminder of how manipulation works. Understanding criminal behavior helps investigators prevent future crimes, and it helps communities stay informed. When the long investigation finally ended, police files filled entire rooms, thousands of pages of reports, hundreds of interviews, evidence collected across several states. The case changed how law enforcement handled serial investigations. After Bundy's crimes, police departments improved communication systems. Databases were created to track patterns between cities and states. Today, investigators can compare cases much faster, and that change has helped solve many crimes that once seemed impossible. Years later, the story of Ted Bundy continues to be studied by historians, detectives, and criminologists, not because of the criminal himself, but because understanding the investigation helps prevent future tragedies. It reminds people that real crime is rarely simple. Sometimes the truth hides behind friendly smiles. Sometimes the pattern takes years to see, but with careful investigation and persistence, the truth can still be uncovered. And for the families who had waited so long for answers, that truth mattered more than anything. If you enjoy true crime stories, criminal investigations, cold cases, missing person mysteries, and documentary storytelling, this video documentary explores the kind of case that keeps investigators searching for answers. In a case gone cold, investigators often turn to the digital ghosts left behind. They should re-examine the victim's digital footprint, social media archives, deleted emails, and location data from their smartphone. New forensic software can uncover hidden communications or a previously unknown connection, revealing a new suspect or a secret life that holds the key to the truth. If you enjoy investigative documentaries, consider liking the video and subscribing for more true crime documentaries, real investigation stories, and unsolved mystery cases.